Thank you for joining us for another edition of Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants. I am Tim Graham of The Athletic, here with my co-host, Jonah Bronstein of Bronstein Amalgamated, and Matthew Fairburn, Buffalo Bills writer for The Athletic. And guys, bye week. Time to hit the pause button on the Bills season, but cannot hit the pause button on Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, because the people demand it, theoretically. Thanks for joining me.
But this being a podcast, they could pause the podcast at any point in time.
That's true.
Or rewind.
Or skip it altogether.
They could take a bye week from us.
As long as you smash that subscribe button, you can do whatever you want. You can mash any other buttons, play with any other toys you want after that.
I'll check the numbers, and we'll see how many people took a pause from the podcast. No Joel Stanishevsky this week because there is no Bills game. Joel had an off week in terms of his record. He finally suffered a couple of betting losses. He went 500 last week, I think.
Now he's hiding.
Well, he's on the bye week, so there's no game for him to handicap. But he went 2-2-1. He gave us some bonus picks last week that didn't pan out. Had he not given us the bonus picks, he would have been fine. But he's 13-6-2 on the season. That'll make you some money.
Does he have any bonus bets for the bye week, or is he in hiding, as Jonah said? He's afraid of his bonus bets now.
I think he's in hiding. I haven't heard from him this week. I think he's hitting the reset button.
I wanted to talk to him about that bad beat on the Bills game where the Bills fall down by 2 points on the Hail Murray and Arizona doesn't kick the extra point on a 2.5 point spread. Yeah. I mean, I understand why the Cardinals didn't do that, but it's, as a bettor, I would think that's a pretty tough way to lose.
Depends what number you got it on, though. It was at 2 for a while during the week, I think. Maybe even less. So they probably covered for some people, but yeah, you're right. If anybody was waiting until the last minute, they got tortured, really, because they thought they were going to lose. They get the Hail Mary, and then they don't get the extra point. So they probably thought they were going to win for a second.
I think the touchdown put it over. So if
it did, yeah.
Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Tre'Davious White, Derek Burrows, Nate Odoms, if any of those Bills knock that ball down, it's not an over.
Not kicking the extra point, I mean, I understand the reasoning, but I disagree with it because there is a possibility that the game, because it can't end on a defensive penalty, let's say something happens where there are 2 seconds on the clock and then there's an interference. The Bills go for a Hail Mary with their possession, and there's an interference that sets up a field goal. I mean, could you imagine the game ending on that because they chose not to kick the extra point? The Bills getting one last play and kicking with their young kicker with his explosive leg and can go 60 yards. Maybe they try even a 70-yarder. I don't know, but.
Yeah, you're weighing
imagine the Bills winning the game because Arizona declined to kick the extra point.
You're kind of weighing the risk of I don't know what the odds are of what you're talking about happening, and I don't know how many extra points generally get both blocked and returned for a touchdown. It's probably a really small amount. Going up 3 would probably I almost feel like the Bills would have been more likely to score a touchdown in the final 2 seconds than to somehow manage a field goal attempt. But like you said, Tyler Bass had shown them some range earlier in that game, probably could have hit from 60 plus. So the risk of the point after was pretty small, but Cliff Kingsbury was playing the math all day.
Or a penalty on the return somehow. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that game could have been extended by a play or 2.
A face mask, or, all of a sudden they're at the 47 and they've got a 64-yard try or whatever. And Bass looked like he could make from 64 on Sunday. So maybe Kingsbury had the Bills in the 2.5 points.
Yeah, tough beat.
Matt, have you ever seen at practice the Bills practicing that block the field goal and take it back and score play? Because I know you You notice all those trick plays on special teams at practice?
Yeah, I'm not at liberty to say. I don't know that you see them. I was more wondering, like, how often do you think they practice the final play, right? The jump ball in the end zone play, because they do end of game situations a lot, and they have a lot of that. But the idea of practicing for that emergency play, which they didn't really think was an emergency play, but yeah, I mean, you see them constantly in practice with the scoop and score technique. Anytime the ball's on the ground, they're coaching those guys to grab it and run, even if it's an incomplete pass. Sometimes it's obnoxious, but they are practicing that. The end of game thing, I'm guessing there's going to be a few more of those drills here in the final 6 weeks.
Yeah, where are we with the Bills here at the bye week? I actually feel better about them after that loss, not because they lost, but just because of the way they played. If you take a holistic view of that game and not get hung up on the final play and the fact that they lost and are now 7-3 instead of 8-2, I come away from their performance in Arizona thinking probably more of them than I did before that game.
Yeah, I think, they've proven a few things in the last few weeks, and particularly on Sunday and against the Seahawks, that they're still capable as a defense of figuring out a quarterback and slowing down that aspect of a team's game. The secondary, I think, has started to play better. Certainly last drive was a problem, but Kyler Murray had 170 yards passing before that. They've shown that they can do that. So, they run into a good quarterback. You don't think they're necessarily going to get shelled. And I think their quarterback has shown he can come through at the very least in important moments. And the bad games like he had on Sunday, or the bad moments that he had on Sunday, aren't lingering the way they did in 2019. So he can pull himself together and, have that final drive that we'd be having a lot different conversation about that game if that final drive stands. So those two elements should give them a chance to beat most teams. Now, they can't run the ball and they can't stop the run. So if they run into the wrong matchup, they could be in trouble. If they run into the right matchups, they might be able to win a few games in the postseason.
Yeah, I would agree with Tim's initial premise that I think the Bills are better now than at 7-3 than I thought they were at 6-2. There was a level that they really could have reached with winning that Arizona game. We're winning 2 games on the schedule that myself and a lot of people, I think, thought they could lose both of those games. And then had they gone into the bye week 8-2, having beaten both of these teams that are in probably the top third of the league, would have been very impressive. And if you look at DVOA, FPI, the different computer power rankings, the Bills have gone up a tick or two even after losing that game because of how well they played against good teams. And they were right there. Losing that game at Arizona is like losing a basketball game on a half-court shot at the end on the road, where a basketball coach walks out of that gym thinking, we almost won. We kind of won that game. We lost on a fluke play. I don't know if that was a fluke loss for the Bills, but that's as close as you can get to winning without winning. And I think just long-term prospects-wise, that loss might have told us more to be confident about with the Bills than beating Seattle at home the week before.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up like a basketball team losing from half court. It's weird to talk about the game dramatically differently because of the result of that play. And I don't think that's really the appropriate way to talk about the game. It really was the final drive. And there was a failure on that final drive. But even to your point, up until the final 34 seconds of the game, they're winning the game. They did everything you would have wanted to see out of them, from shutting down Kyler Murray as a passer to Josh Allen coming through with the important drive and a really great throw on the go-ahead touchdown. And then, 8-2 looks different than 7-3, but to, focus in too much on the result just because of a crazy play, kind of misses a lot of, what happened on Sunday. Certainly you don't ignore the final drive because there was some coaching issues there. There was certainly, some undisciplined play from, a few of their players. But that's 34 seconds over the course of a whole game that they really competed well in and probably should have won. So, yeah, I don't feel dramatic. It's not as if it's like, well, before that final drive, I thought this was a team ready to compete for the Super Bowl. But that final drive, they ruined it. Now they're 7-3. I mean, it hopefully is something that they don't repeat. Better for it to happen now than in the playoffs.
6 games left, going through the games, and we'll do that with Gerald Dixon, actually. Gerald Dixon's going to be back on the show today. Also, a University of Buffalo football coach, Lance Leipold, will be joining us to talk about his undefeated UB Bulls and their next game against undefeated Kent State, which is a sentence that has maybe never been uttered, unless you're talking about when they're 0-0.
Kent State is the last team to defeat UB. UB hasn't lost in more than a calendar year since it lost at Kent State in, what would that have been, the 9th game of last season.
Grudge match. Big grudge match.
UB revenge tour.
Tim's a big Kent State fan.
Kent Reed.
Tim and Josh Reed.
Kent State. Yeah, my brother and sister both graduated from Kent State. I went there for a semester and didn't enjoy it. Not that it was Kent State's fault. It was just that I had already gone to Baldwin-Wallace and wanted to transfer into the journalism program and decided I'll go back to Baldwin-Wallace and not have to wait to get into the journalism program at Kent State and graduate in 4 years. What else do we want to say here before we get to, before we get to Lance Leipold?
Well, we're less than a week, just a few days before the start of the college basketball season. We know maybe a little more than we did a week ago about schedules and what teams are playing where, but not a lot more. It's very tenuous as to how this season is going to start, as is college football. I think is tenuous to how many games are going to be played and finished. I think there's more games canceled this week than any other previous week this season, up to 15. There's probably been 2 or 3 games canceled since we started recording. But college basketball is on schedule to start. UB has got some exhibition games on Wednesday night, Wednesday afternoon, and then Thanksgiving weekends when every team starts to get going with their non-conference schedule.
You know what I just noticed on UB's official schedule? I could understand somebody doing this at the Mid-American Conference site or something, ESPN.com, but at UB's own site on their schedule, they say home games take place in Buffalo, New York.
Yeah, they do that. I don't know. I guess it's the University of Buffalo, and technically the South Campus is in Buffalo. And they're Buffalo. That's probably a branding thing more than location. But St. Bonaventure does that with saying St. Bonaventure instead of Olean or Allegheny. Niagara is in Lewiston. They don't put Lewiston date lines on their press releases. They put Niagara University date lines. I guess that's just
St. Bonaventure, though, has its own zip code. So I think that technically, or it might be an incorporated, there might be a loophole there. But it shouldn't be based on your zip code. It's based on the actual town. What St. Bonaventure is? St. Bonaventure in? I think St. Bonaventure is an actual place.
Well, we went over this last on the radio with forgetting his name, but the coach that played at Bona, and he's the Syracuse radio guy.
I know his name. I'm just going to let you twist.
Anyways, we talked about how it's in Allegheny.
Jim Sadler.
Colloquially, everybody, yes, Jim Sadler, would say it's Olean, and then I think you confirmed with somebody or looked it up that they actually do have this tiny little spot on the map that's called St. Bonaventure, and it's neither Allegheny nor Olean.
No one is listening to this show anymore.
Yeah, I know. I just
all
spent
because
5 seconds trying to come up with a name.
Yeah, once Jonah forgot that name, they knew we can't be trusted.
We can edit that whole thing out like it never happened.
But we're not gonna. In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to remind people that Tim Graham and Friends is brought to you by Shampoo, Travis, Besaw, and Kirshner, CPAs and business consultants. CTBK is a leading accounting firm with a growing team of accountants and business consultants with roots in Amherst, New York. Not Buffalo, folks. Amherst, New York. CTBK pairs every project with a focus on a human connection between its team and the client. For assurance, accounting, taxes, litigation support, and advice on mergers and acquisitions, CTBK is available and ready to solve any issue your business faces. For a consultation or to request a quote, call 716-630-2400. Again, that's 716-630-2400. CTBK, over a quarter century of proven accounting and business excellence for Western New York and beyond. And without further ado, I believe CTBK also is a sponsor of UB Athletics. Let's check in with University at Buffalo football coach Lance Leipold about his Bulls as they also are on a bye this week and get ready to face Kent State on November 28th in Amherst, New York. And joining us now on Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, CPAs and Business Consultants, it is University at Buffalo football coach Lance Leipold. I guess I should back it up a second. The undefeated University at Buffalo football coach Lance Leipold. You've been off to a good start, but here we are mid-November. We shouldn't be talking about starts, should we?
No,
how's this been for you?
It's been really unique, and I think for everybody, probably in every facet of life that we've gone through a lot, and it's been a unique few months, but really proud of our players, our staff on how we've gone about it and been able to kind of persevere and actually get games played and played well so far.
Mid-American Conference, I guess let's take a 30,000-foot view of the conference. You were selected to, you were the preseason favorites to win the conference, which comes with a lot of other things like bowl games and usually top 25 and all that type of thing. How are the kids and you also handling that you're missing out on some of the cool bonuses that come with being the best team in this conference because of the shortened season and the fact that other conferences got off to a earlier start than you did?
We've always tried, Tim, in our program to take it a day at a time and control what we can and kind of, as we say, be where your feet are at. And right now, just getting out of kind of isolation and quarantines and pauses have been probably more enjoyable than to really think about maybe what was missed. We had 2 Power 5 games scheduled, some experiences that won't happen. But if we spend a lot of time worrying about what we don't get, we're not going to have the chance to really accomplish things that we can. And that's been our approach. To get the chance to play, just 6 MAC games is still a good opportunity. Predicted to win something by those of you in the media or anyone else. Speculation is flattering and those things, but if you don't go out and execute the way you can, you set yourself up for disappointment and failure. So again, we've taken this approach of the challenges ahead. We're playing a really good Kent State team coming in a week from Saturday, who's also undefeated, a game that we let slip away from us a year ago. So there's plenty of things for us to work on and improve on, and whether or not there's a chance to play for a conference championship or participate in a bowl game are things that are yet to be determined, and hopefully we'll have that opportunity down the road.
As a native Northeastern Ohioan, and I attended Kent State for a semester. My brother and my sister both graduated from Kent. I think that really sums up how strange 2020 is when you say out of your mouth a really good Kent State team, because that is not something I'm used to hearing. And I covered them. One of my first jobs was at the paper in Kent, Ohio. Yeah. strange days that Kent State is doing well.
Yeah, Sean Lewis
leading the country in scoring.
Yeah, they're averaging 52, I think, a game. Sean Lewis in his third year, he's brought the up-tempo offense. He worked with Dino Babers at Bowling Green, actually Eastern Illinois, Bowling Green, and Syracuse. So, they're going to try to run as many plays as fast as they can. And quite honestly, Tim, I think we could say if there's not many people that many times will say an undefeated Kent State team playing an undefeated Buffalo team. And,
that's right.
And I think, again, focusing on ourselves for us to be the consistent program we desire to be, to have the opportunity, a great opportunity to be on national television for the fourth consecutive week. I kind of, I joke around, but our first year or so, we played a lot of games right here on the computer, on ESPN3 and ESPN. I don't even think there was ESPN Plus then, but I mean, I think our program, our administration, everything has worked extremely hard that we've been able to have a chance to be in this national spotlight, so to speak, or national, and it continues to help our program.
Lance, when you talk about being on TV, winning on TV, having the success that you guys have had, it's the first time in the Division I era in several decades that UV's had consistent, successful seasons in a row. You're working on your fourth season that will probably be over 500. The facility upgrades you guys have made with the locker room and the long-awaited field house last year. And even the other night you were talking about the Bills' success has factored in a little bit for you guys. How have all of these successes and milestones that you've reached over the last couple of years, do you think raised the stature of Buffalo football when you're out there recruiting, talking to other coaches and people in the college football world?
Well, it definitely does. After our game, and you turn your phone back on and, you got a 5-hour trip back home and all the text messages and whatnot, but it's from peers in the profession, media people nationally, the opportunities we've had the chance to go there, with the Miami game, as you well know, it's 70 plus degrees on that day. I've learned after being here for almost 6 years now, there's a lot of stereotypes about this area that we have to overcome, but people that really don't know how special a place this is. And so when you get a chance to play and have good weather and, because we have some beautiful weather at certain times of the year, as we know, but overcome some of those things, play winning football, have support, whether it be administration, university-wide, community-wide, booster-wide, that allows us to upgrade the facilities to be on par with our competition. And I mentioned the Bills because, again, what they do, again, the national spotlight that they get, that you can build winning footballs in this region, I think is definitely a positive. And I think, the area when we came in here, is suffering from having some success in sports. And that's what I was told. And when Danny White hired me, that was one of the things we wanted to continue to try to change and build and change how we were looked at. And I think we're getting there. I'll never be satisfied, and we'll continue to chip away and build that consistent winner that this university and area deserves.
When it comes to recruiting, clearly the success you've had on the field shows you brought in good players. If you look at things like star ratings and when they rank the recruiting classes, your first few years here, they weren't ranked as high. Now in the last couple classes, I don't know if they're all 3-star guys you got when I look at the verbal commits, but it seems that way. Do you feel that you guys are bringing in a higher caliber of talent in this coming class?
Well, that's interesting. We do feel we're recruiting better. We're getting in on players. We think a lot of reasons are for that. But, I just got off the practice field and, Chuck Harris, Cam Lewis had stopped out. Cam Lewis with the Bills and Chuck Harris. And Chuck was in the Bears camp, was on the practice squad with Jacksonville. Cam obviously started a game with the Bills. You know what? Those are 2-star guys, okay? Nobody gave them I look at Evan Gasarchik getting in a camp. What we have tried to do, and one is that we're not going to get overly hung up on star ratings, and that is we want to find somebody that fits our system, is going to fit in here, but also someone that has a high ceiling in development. And there's different ways that works. And I think our staff has evaluated well, not always perfectly, but we've evaluated well, and we've really developed what the players that we had to reach potentials that they have. So, but now if you can continue to get in on players and being in conversations against schools that you never were before, that again is going to continue to increase. I think we're seeing that a little bit more, Jonah. But again, I would say when you look at even some of those first classes, there's some players that, and again, you're going to have your top group. I've always said this about recruiting. I think 1/3 of the players end up like you expect them. 1/3 of them exceed your expectations, and 1/3 ends up kind of disappointing you maybe a little bit for one reason or another, not meeting it. But if you can, and that's the way it usually turns out. The biggest thing is keeping guys. You know, in today's world, guys want to hit the eject button, transfer if there's not instant playing time or gratification. And for us, finding that right fit here allows us to do the weight room development, the skill development, and do the things that we're looking for.
How much have the facilities impacted recruiting? And I'm guessing it's generally been positive, but are there some tangible examples or anecdotes that show, yes, this guy chose us because now we are on par with other schools that he visited, and he likes what he sees out of our field house and locker rooms?
Absolutely. We really haven't, the locker room just was completed. We haven't really, we did some photos of it. We haven't even walked a recruit through that thing yet. So we're really hoping and looking forward to that day. The field house, definitely. I could tell you stories yet, and our next thing we have to improve on is our weight room. We have some players and, that we brought in, and we brought in some good players, and that we thought during a coaching change, they ended up staying with the school in our league that originally had they committed to, but they walked in and they did look at our weight room and some other, and one of our coaches was standing behind them, and they kind of looked over at one another and rolled their eyes, so there are some things that you still got to do, and they are extremely important, Tim, and they are. I guess the one example, and when Alan Green was here as our athletic director, and I try to use it, is that people go, well, why do you need a practice facility or not? Well, we know there's snow and there's weather, but it's almost like a lab or a library that a student uses for, it's not the classroom, it's the next part. And I can remember our first practice at the Ad Pro Center, my first year as a head coach, and our quarterbacks and receivers had never thrown the ball to one another since I'd been hired. Well, balls are flying all over. Like Joe Licato's our quarterback. It's not Joe's fault. We have no timing. They haven't worked on timing in 3 months. Now our players get it's like open gym. It's like a basketball player never getting a chance to go shoot around in the off season. Now they get a chance to go run routes and do things and work on timing and consistency. When that field house opened, after the very first practice, I had a dozen guys come up and say, is it going to be open tonight? Can I come back in here and do something? And that's when it's inclement. Those are the ways, the uncharted hours without coaches around, where players take the next step. And I think those are huge dividends our program is benefiting from.
If I could stay on the recruiting subject real quick, it's a unique season for all colleges, where schools in New York and several other states will be playing in the spring. How will that affect you and your staff's approach, and what maybe would you say, or have you said to targets in these states about spring football not playing in the fall, and how does that affect an athlete's ability to be recruited at this time?
Well, it's been very unique, John, just like everything. Right now, with our commitments, which I can't comment specifically on players, we are pretty much at our limit where we want to be, and hopefully when with the early signing period comes in December, we'll be able to sign all those players. The unique part is none of them will ever have officially been on campus, and which is different for them, and that's going to go across the country, where it's going to be really unique about retention at all schools around the country, when players have really committed to go play at places where they haven't really been on campus much, if maybe not at all. So the 21 class is going to be unique in that way. The other part of this component is the NCAA has paused everyone's eligibility. So now your fifth year senior or your senior, you know, he has the ability to come back for another year. And you can be over your scholarship limit, but you also have to have the finances to do so. So, you know, we'll probably stay at our 85 limit. So we have to make sure we have slots and all those things. So finding those players are still playing. I view anyone playing in the spring like they will in New York is probably going to help us evaluate more the 22 class, to be quite honest. Hopefully, it may benefit our walk-on program. And I know everybody wants scholarships and that, but hopefully there's going to be some under the radar guys that may not get an opportunity. Unfortunate for them, but hopefully there'll be some slots for us to take advantage of and offer them an opportunity to compete at the Division I level. And if I could add, there's things I've learned, you know, since being here, and, you know, New York high school football that doesn't get a lot of recognition for multiple reasons. We could analyze, you know, where it is on the map as far as other places. But the thing we've tried to do, especially with our local players, our Section 5 and 6 players, is because maybe there's not a spring football, there's not these other things, these athletes have a higher ceiling sometimes than a place in one of the hotbeds of recruiting where they have 0 hours for, you know, to start the day with weightlifting and do it. Sometimes that player's really close to reaching his fullest potential, size-wise, speed-wise, everything, football knowledge-wise, you know. And sometimes when you come into a state that's not as, you know, I guess I don't want to say the word serious, but there's not as many opportunities. You have a player that if he's really a good athlete, I said it's going to make bigger jumps. And I think when you look at some of the players in our program, Evan Kasarczyk, it was one that comes quickly to mind. Watch the growth potential of somebody like that.
Yeah, Giovanni Ruiz was recruited to the track team, originally walked on football, and now he's one of your starting receivers.
Yeah, exactly. There's a guy who's a walk-on, was injured 2 different times. You know, quite frankly, I told him he wanted, you know, what he's going to do to play. I said, Giovanni, if you really want to play and you're getting at an age, I think you may have to look at a lower level. And he was really upset with me. And I feel really bad because, but I'm glad that it motivated him that he proved me wrong. And I'm the first one to say I was wrong, but it was mainly about time and opportunity. But you're right. There's a young man that once he gets a chance to have spring football, consistent weight program, staying healthy, he's put himself in a great opportunity and spot to help our football team.
Lance, I know that when you have a player like Jarrett Patterson and a run game that you do, it's pretty easy to identify what your team is all about and the persona that it takes on Tuesday nights or Saturday afternoons, whatever, what you're trying to accomplish. But 3 games in, generally a team is trying to figure itself out still. And this is the type of year in a normal year when you start learning what your team's identity is. So I guess my question is, from a philosophical standpoint, you're 3 games in, you only have 3 games left on the schedule. Do you think you'll even know at the end of this year what your team was supposed to be about and who, you know, what you were capable of?
That's an excellent question. That's probably to be determined. I think when if you watched our game against Miami, Ohio, I think you saw glimpses of what we wanted to be consistently. Now, it's not always going to work the way it did in the second half there, but a team that's going to generate play action, explosive plays, and not just to Antonio Nunn. We were able to get the ball to the tight end, Zach LaFave, for some big plays. We were able to get Trevor Wilson, and then Giovanni Ruiz had a couple big catches. Then Antonio had his share. Now we're very diverse in what we're doing, but we're spreading that ball around. And then hopefully that's something that keeps the defensive coordinator up at night. And then, you got 2 pretty darn good guys in the backfield that can run the football, and an offensive line that was doing a good job protecting the quarterback. That's what we strive for. And to play like that against the defending conference champ was really great to see. Now, last week's game, we were more one-dimensional for multiple reasons. We got to find that. So that on that side of the ball. Defensively, honestly, Tim, we're not even close to being what we could be because we're just not healthy over there right now. On paper, what we're going to be our 2 starting cornerbacks have not started yet. Ali Abbas is one of those corners, has played 9 plays all year, and Apri Washington hasn't even suited up yet. Tyrone Hill, an all-conference safety, missed last week's game. Tim Terry's been battling a foot issue. We've missed Ron McGee, who's played excellent football at defensive tackle, played really well the first game, and he had a shoulder injury in that first game. Taylor Riggins is on watch lists and things like that, has not played a down yet this year and may not. So, I mean, when you're talking that many guys on a defense that everybody's talking, you got all these starters coming back, and we've had some growing pains, and we struggled a little bit on Tuesday night slowing down a Bowling Green team. So I'm hoping we can get some of those guys back so that we will be able to say what type of team we could be.
I looked at the schedule before the year. I've covered UB football for about 15 years. I looked at the shortened schedule, the not having non-conference games, how good you guys were. I really thought that Miami game was a big gauge, but coming off that result, I see from my perspective an opportunity to run the table, to have a kind of perfect season that Buffalo has never had before. You coached at Wisconsin Whitewater, I believe it was 5 times you guys went undefeated in a season. Had a run a couple years ago at UB where you won 11 to 12 games over the 2 seasons. I kind of wanted to ask you, I understand the success that you had at Wisconsin and here was taking it 1 game at a time. But do you recognize a unique opportunity with the way the schedule is lined up this year? And do you think the team sees that at all?
Well, you took my answer away, Jonah. So you've been around me long enough to know how I'm going to answer.
That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to cut that off at the end.
And then he took it off the table. So you're not allowed to say that.
Yeah, well, I'll say this is I think for anyone in the MAC that feels they're at a certain point in their program, taking the non-conference games against the Power 5 opponent off the table gives everybody kind of a lot more level playing field. I'd say that. And where it matches up, when they said we're going conference only and where it was going to be at, and did I like our chances of what we could do? But again, I hate to say it because it's cliche, but if you start worrying about playing a game in December that that's not on the schedule, that you haven't earned yet, you're never going to get there. I used to say this at Whitewater. We'd have people call the office and ask what hotel we were staying at for the national championship. And you got to win 4 playoff games before you even go to that game, let alone you got to win your conference. So, and from that day on, it was just like, you better stay where you're at. And like I said, we're playing an undefeated team leading the nation in scoring, who came back and beat us in regulation after they were down by 3 scores. And we let it go. I mean, if we start talking about anything other than trying to slow Kent down and finding a way to get a win, everything else will be looked at as a disappointment, underachieving season. So, and it's still going to be challenging. And then after that, we haven't won down in Athens, Ohio yet. So, I mean, before we say anything is going to be given, we've got to sit there and stay where we're at. But again, to try to give you something off this question, I like our football team. I like where we're at. I think this is a group of guys that have been here long enough know that it's not just a situation where we take the field and hope to win if we play well enough. That's different. Okay, this is a group now that goes out there, and if they prepared the right way, they expect to win. And I think that goes to the other things that we had talked about prior to this, and hopefully that's the way we're going to continue moving forward.
Lance, I won't use the word satisfied, but what are you happiest with so far that you've seen through 3 games from your team?
Our perseverance. I think perseverance just through COVID, perseverance of all the different things we've asked them to do. You went on calls like this with some really disappointed faces, and to watch them kind of learn and adjust and go through different things. Perseverance through some of the things I just talked about with able bodies, going through that. I walked into the locker room later was ready to do a post-game interview, and then got into the teams waiting like they're always, and it was quiet. It was almost disappointed. They were disappointed, and I was disappointed that they were disappointed a little bit in the fact that it wasn't as clean a game as what we would expect or wanted. And to me, that's a step in the right direction as a program when you know you can play better. We talk about having a standard of expectation. And when you know they didn't meet it, that they own it and understand that. I'll go back to 2017. We played at Minnesota, and I remember getting back on the plane, and boosters were on the plane, and they were so happy that we kept the game close. And all of a sudden, the days of moral victories, hopefully around here, are over with. Okay, you go out and compete, you win, you lose. And if you came up short, you came up short, no matter where you're at. And though I appreciate it, I was very proud of our team, and I knew we had taken a big step that first day, and had a chance in that game late. But a loss is a loss, and I think if I look at this year, really from that Minnesota game on, the difference is that this program isn't that anymore, where you're just glad to play. It's not like, oh, well, yeah, we were up at Penn State at halftime last year, but they kicked our tail the second half. Okay, no doubt about it. Those days are done, and then we either go out there and compete, no matter who's on that schedule, and we go, and we're going to fight through that. And I think that's what I'm proud of this group and coaching staff.
Lance, is there anything you want to mention that we didn't ask you about?
Oh, I don't know. Jonah, you probably have something that I forgot that you're always good at bringing back up. But I'd say this.
It sounds like a backhanded thing of pretty much saying that Jonah, just when you think you're off the hook, Jonah makes sure to ruin your day.
I don't want to say ruin my day, because I say this because I do appreciate Jonah, because I know he pays attention to our program. And he does a good job of bringing some things to light. So, but I guess the last thing, we've talked about our facilities and recruiting, and the underlying thing is, I guess I want to also make sure I tip my hat to our staff and our coaching staff, and for a school in the Mid-American Conference. And I tried to do this when I put the staff together when I was hired as the head coach, is that I wanted to hire a staff that it was possibly their best job they've ever had at this point of their career. And the reason is so they wouldn't be looking to go back to the best job that they had before. And then we'd embrace what we have. We try to make it the best we can. And we've been able to keep the majority of our coaches here and create the continuity that I believe truly is needed to build a consistent football program. And I really am thankful for them, because they're the ones that are getting it done and putting the plans together, and allow us to have that. So I thank them and everyone else that supports our program.
Lance, since you asked, I do have one more related to you and your staff. And to be honest, I thought it was one Tim was going to ask. I was leaving it on the table for Tim, maybe a little bit of a juicy question. But I remember I covered this team a decade ago when Turner Gill was here, and it was after I think a 5-7 win season, 5-7 season, and there was a lot of talk about, where's Turner going to go? What jobs will open up for him? Nate Oates was here a couple of years ago. He was pretty open about the opportunities that would intrigue him and the ones that wouldn't. What is your stance? What is your answer to that kind of looming question that comes up whenever you have success at this level about the opportunity to possibly, move on and coach in the Power 5?
Well, I'll answer it with three different things. One is, I guess the first and foremost was you never say never, because as you know, a lot of things have changed around me here while I've been here, like from the people that have hired me. But I really enjoy working with Mark Allnut. So you never know what happens. But when I interviewed for this job, I had interviewed, and one of the things that I had said was, my goal was to build a program as consistent as Ohio University and Frank Solich. I worked for Frank for 3 seasons. And I looked at that as like, this would be the last job. Okay. So you don't know. And that was going to be I think we've started to build that type of consistency. you get in a speculation game. You're again, that's kind of like looking ahead on your schedule. You're wasting time. It was funny when we were 2-10. You're talking about recruiting earlier. People we were recruiting against said, "Why would you go to Buffalo? They're going to get fired in a year." 2 years later, we're winning 10 games, and people are going, "Why would you go to Buffalo? That staff isn't going to be there. Leaving for another job." Well, 10 losses and 10 wins, and I'm still sitting here talking to you. And I hope we keep doing it for a long time.
The 10 wins part, not the 10 losses part.
Well, no, talking to you guys, though. Right. We'll keep trying.
Well, what's worse? What's worse, though? 10 losses or talking to us?
Flip a coin? No.
Yeah, I would say.
I tell you what, 10 losses. Now, 10 losses is that was a long, hard year in a lot of ways, because in a lot of different ways. But I'll share this with you as well. One of the other reasons I left Whitewater and took a job, unfortunate at the FBS level, but a job like Buffalo, was when I got my first full-time real job as a position coach at the University of Nebraska Omaha Division II school. We were 1-10 my first year. We were 3-8 the second year, and we were 10-2 the third year. I viewed that, even through my times at Whitewater, as the most enjoyable time in my coaching career. It was hard, and there was a lot of tough days. And again, when you're not sitting in the head coach's chair, there's a lot of other stuff that you don't have to worry about during those tough times. But I really enjoyed watching that come together, and I wanted to experience that again. That's what I wanted to do. I inherited an excellent program that was on really good footing at Whitewater. To get it over the hump and then sustaining it was very difficult and challenging and rewarding, but it was at a good point. And the next part of the challenging part of a career was to take something that hadn't had much success. This program won 27% of its MAC games and 37% of its FBS games overall before we got here. And to see where we're at, that was the next challenge. And we're taking those right steps right now.
Lance, thanks for doing this. Good luck the rest of the season. I hope you play all 6 games and a 7th and an 8th, right? You want to finish the season with 8 games, right?
That would be the goal. So, but I appreciate the opportunity, guys. Thanks for asking. If there's another opportunity we could do it, love to do it.
Right on. Take care.
Right. Thank you, Lance.
And back for what has become a weekly segment on Tim Graham and Friends, brought to you by CTBK, is former Bills scout Gerald Dixon. And when we relaunched the show a couple of months back, I did not anticipate this blessing of having Gerald Dixon to come in and give us his thoughts on the Bills and the NFL, whether it be X's and O's or just philosophical approaches to players, scouting. It's just been it's been a joy to have Gerald Dixon. So he's back with us here. Gerald, thanks for doing it again.
Man, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, it's here we are at the bye week. 6 games left. The Bills are in first place, albeit by just a half a game over the Miami Dolphins. And the Dolphins playing this week, they're favored over the Denver Broncos. So we could be looking at a tie atop the AFC East. But let's let me just get your general thoughts on the Bills here at 7-3 with a break, a chance to catch a breather, and then get ready for the home stretch and trying to find some real momentum heading into the postseason.
Well, I mean, 7-3, you're in a pretty good spot. 8-2 would have been much better, but you can take a couple of things from what happened last week, right? You can take the plus from it that your quarterback came back, your offense came back in the last second and took the lead. Defense obviously gave it up at the end, but those are 2 correctable plays that you can go into bye weeks, and one hurts real bad, but the other one's a good feeling. All right. So taking away from the game, you got some stuff to work on, which is always good going into the bye week. Not saying it's an awful and negative thing. It's a terrible feeling of taking a loss going into bye week, but it's something that you can learn from. And I know that Coach McDermott is always preaching It's not failure. It's not disappointing. It's teachable in the moment to learn. So I know those guys are going to go into the week and get some good stuff out of it. But just touching up on the record and from my point of view, things that they are doing well and things that they can improve on going into the stretch. And after you cut the turkeys, when real football starts to count, because these games are the momentum builder going into the playoffs. Right? You look at it and say, well, you found your franchise quarterback. Let's put that to bed. The conversation about that, we don't need to have that anymore. So you got your quarterback, and he's playing at a pretty high level, right? You found some pieces on offense in terms of your receivers, right? So you got the young rookie that's probably one of the better blockers out there, man. Davis can block his tail off, and when he's asked to make plays, he's making some good plays, right? You got your number 2 player, John Brown. I mean, he's a little bit banged up here and there, but you found that piece. Cole Beasley in the slot is a sultan of the slot, one of the better slot players. Offensive line, your left tackle's playing well. Now, when you start going into the guards, I mean, it's kind of been up and down because there's been pieces been in and the guys been out, and the injuries kind of really made that cohesiveness and continuity not there yet, so to say. Your right tackle, Williams, is playing very well, so to speak. And we go back to the interior of it, right? So now that you go into the off week, you can have a good week of practicing and coming back and saying, what combination should we go with moving forward? If Cody Ford comes back, is that the piece that you want? Mitch Morris, one of the better centers in the NFL. You want that in there, and then you got Feliciano that came back and playing with nasty attitude, blocking pretty well. So it's an issue, but it's a good problem to have when you have real good players. So on that side of the ball, it's pretty good. You still got to figure out the running game, but that's the offensive line playing together has a lot to do with it, in my opinion.
Well, let's stay with the offensive line. You mentioned there that they do have options, and one of the reasons that I think maybe you shouldn't be, as a Bills fan, too overly concerned is the value that Brandon Beane and the scouting department have put on versatility among their offensive linemen. It helps them make for some more interchangeable parts when a player like Mitch Morse, if he needs to leave the lineup, which he did because of the concussion a couple of weeks back. But the other positions, too, are very flexible that provide these options. But like you say, they haven't had the unit that they intended to be their starting unit for any games so far this year. So what do you make of that? And I guess, do you have an opinion on Mitch Morse not playing, even though he was cleared to play Sunday in Arizona?
Well, my opinion on Mitch not playing is I'm not in the building, so I'm not going to jump into why and why not. If it was a coach's call, maybe they felt that he wasn't ready mentally to go into the game. And the other player, Feliciano, might have had a better week of playing. And going to the bye week, you give a player such as Mitchell, say a week off and get ready for the final stretch. That might be a play into it. And also you have another chance to look at Ike Butker, right, to see is he a player? Can we count on him moving forward? If we do lose Mitch for a longer period of time, is Ike, Feliciano, and Winters a better group than Ford, Winters, and Feliciano? So it's a good way to look at it in terms of seeing where you truly are as an offensive line and see what the best combination is.
How much do you think that offensive line, that's one piece of the running game, certainly, but what else have you noticed with their inability to run the football? I think there's a lot that goes into it that maybe people don't see, but when you've been watching, what do you see as some of the problems there?
All right, so for me, Motor, I thought Motor's some of his best traits coming out was his ability to make players miss in close confines, right? His elusibility or his elusiveness, and to create plays when you have a free hitter in the box. And I haven't seen that this year. And I don't know if that's because he's hurt. If he's put on some weight and he's not that shifty, he just doesn't look as shifty as he was last year. So that's a part of it. Second part of it is just being creative, right? You're as creative as they are in the pass game. You'd hope that you see some more creativity in the run game. And when you run the ball, you have to stick with it, right? So there's times that you're going to get 1 yard, you get 2 yards, 3, and then here comes 30. But the second that you move away from it, you don't get that feel that those big guys up front need, and to start weighing down on those bigger guys up front, because at the end of the day, football is a big man's game. Big people moving other big people, you create lanes. So you have to do it over a period of time to get that feel both ways.
Gerald, I want to ask you a philosophical question related to that at all levels of football. I cover University of Buffalo football team, runs the ball as well as any in the country, and is as run dominant as any team in the country. The Bills, on the other end of the spectrum, are a team that have abandoned the running game for a whole game and pass a lot more than they run. How important is balance to success on offense?
Well, balance is important, right? But you got to think of it as this. There are times that you go into a game that you have to adjust. And if you're going into a game with the secondaries really struggling and your better players are receivers and your best player is a quarterback, you got to get the ball into those guys' hands, right? If you throw the ball for 5 yards, it's just as good as a 5-yard run. But where it really comes into play is when you have to close games out, right? And you say, you know what, we got 4 minutes left. You get going to your 4 minutes offense, and you have to run the ball to kind of like just take away the time, right? And to me, that's when it comes into play. And then you got to think about it as a mentality and a mindset. If you're a passing team, your defense is going to struggle against the run because you're not seeing that on a day-to-day basis or throughout training camp where good is going against good, right? So your run game on offense going against your run game on defense. And it's a mentality that you just got to have at the end of the day. And I think that's where I don't really care about balance. I care about the ability to do it when you need to do it at any time. If that makes sense.
Just to wrap up offense, because I know we'll get into defense here and your thoughts on position by position and units, what have you, on the defensive side. But Gerald, what are your thoughts on Bills at tight end? And of course, they've had trouble with health there. Dawson Knox, because of the concussion and the different weird COVID things that have happened that have removed Knox and also Tyler Croft from the lineup here and there. How much does the Bills tight end play impact where they are as a running team right now?
I mean, if you have a good tight end, it helps. That can truly block at the point of attack and create some movement. But in my opinion, I don't truly see that with either one of the tight ends that the Bills are using. Now, your best blocking tight end is Lee Smith, but when Lee's out there, I mean, everybody in the NFL knows that he's out there for a reason. He's the 6th offensive line. I've done Tyler Croft for a while since he's been in the NFL, and I wasn't a big fan of his ability to block. I thought he was solid at it, and at the end of the day, a solid tight end in the NFL. The second-year guy, 88, Knox Dawson. Is it Dawson? It's Dawson Knox. I apologize.
Dawson Knox, right?
Knox, yeah. I mean, you're taking a former walk-on quarterback with some athletics traits, speed, and sometimes you see some dynamic plays out of him, but the consistency of catching the ball and overall just physicality in terms of when he's blocking, you don't see that. So he's a developmental guy that's learning on the job, right? Which is tough when you're asking him to block defensive ends and linebackers that I don't think physically is capable enough to do that yet. But 10 personnel to me, when you go 4 receivers, is probably their best bet. So that's why I didn't really even mention the tight end, because when the tight end's in there, I think that's not the best personnel group for them.
You mentioned something that I find pretty interesting. The idea that the Bills' run defense might be suffering because they don't see a good run offense in practice, and you don't have, the best going up against the best. This is not a new problem for the Bills' defense. Allowing these big games on the ground. What are you seeing from, whether it's the front seven or scheme wise, that's allowing this to continue to happen? It was the 7th time under Sean McDermott on Sunday that they've allowed 200 yards of rushing in a game.
Well, like I said before, when you talk about run game, let's talk about first on the perimeter. Perimeter, you got to have those guys on the edge, right? Defensive ends setting the edge, and you don't see that consistently enough. And when I talk about setting the edge, I'm talking about defensive end getting off into either the tight end or the tackles and knocking them back into the backfield and creating a new line of scrimmage with the ability to shed and get off and make a play. You don't see that consistently out of Jerry, Mario, or Trent. And now your safeties come into play where you have to have some bigger guys to come down there, and when they do get down there to make tackles, but make some physical tackles. So when you have safeties that are filling that alley and running the alley that are 5'10", 195, 200-pound guys, over a period of time, they're going to get worn down. And there are going to be some missed tackles when you're going against bigger and physical backs. And you've seen that over a period of time when teams start running to perimeter. And then your linebackers now come to play on the second level, where they got to get over the top of blocks, scrape, get downhill, and make tackles in space. And even though that Tremaine has tremendous range, when you see him get into space, oftentimes you see him miss tackles because he's 6'5". All right, when you're 6'5", you got long legs. It's hard to get into position and come to balance fairly quick and react and make those tackles out in the open. So those are the things that I see on the perimeter that can they get fixed? Yes. Are they going to? Well, it's only time will tell. But if that does not get fixed over a period of time, when you get in the playoffs, the games get tighter, possession gets shorter, and you don't want to give up 200 yards in the run game, in the playoff game. Now, when we get to the interior, it's big guys, right? Big on big, mano a mano, tough on tough, and strength and size wins for the most part. And a nasty downhill linebacker, either your Mike, Sam, or Will coming down there to cause a major collision and knock guys back. So when you have Jefferson, right, Ed Oliver, Zimmer's probably playing the best out of all the group in my all the guys in the group, in my opinion. They aren't setting that line of scrimmage and getting off of blocks and making tackles in the backfield enough to negate those big runs up the middle. And when you aren't taking on blocks and keeping blockers off of your linebackers at the the second level, now those blockers are getting into the lap of your linebackers. Now that's creating more space, more gap for those running backs to find those holes. So you got to go either one way or the other. You got to say, I'm going to take on blocks and not allow the offensive linemen to get off into the linebackers, right, with size and strength. Or I'm going to single gap penetrate, get in the backfield, and make sure that the running backs either stutter their feet or they're not getting down into my gap. So I don't see either one of those happening on a consistent basis.
What would you say is your year two? We're halfway through year 2 on Ed Oliver now. Complicated sometimes from the outside to look at defensive tackle play. People want to see numbers, but that doesn't always tell the whole story. But this guy being a top 10 pick, there's a certain level of expectation there. What's your thumbnail sketch of what Ed Oliver has been for this team halfway through his second year?
If I had to come up with a word, just inconsistency. Inconsistent play, both as a pass rusher and a run defender. Right. You see flashes of explosiveness, ability to single gap, penetrate. But there's times that you see that the small guy, he plays small, right? He's small and he plays small. And you see bigger offensive linemen get on him, engulf him in the run game. And then he doesn't have enough strength, for the most part, against double team to hold up. So my opinion is he has to figure out what works for him and do that on a consistent basis. But he's been an inconsistent player in my eyes. And when you're a top 10 pick, inconsistency doesn't work out for the most part.
How about the defensive backfield, Gerald? That's your area of expertise. And I'll save the question about how to defend DeAndre Hopkins and maybe your thoughts on that play. But as the bye week overview, where are you with this defensive backfield?
Well, when you look at development, right, I think that's the best group to me that's been developed. Because you got your number one corner, but Levi Wallace was a free agent, right? Now he's a starter in the NFL and a solid player, right? The young guy that came in, the 7th round out of Pittsburgh, made some very good plays. You got an older guy in Josh. Josh is just an older guy that you don't see the same burst. He wasn't a fast guy to begin with, but what he won on for the most part was ball skills and just his overall instincts. And as you get older, you can still have those instincts. You can still have those ball skills, but at some point you're going to have to run with younger guys, and that's where he's struggling. But the corners, I think, are holding up pretty well, because if you look at the game last week, I want to say going into the last two drives, Kyler only had 170 or 80 yards throwing the football.
170 going into the last drive.
Right, and they did a pretty good job on Hopkins for the most part until the last play. But their safeties, I think they might be the best duo. If not number one, they're two. I mean, those guys are playmakers. They're tough. Leadership ability, because you always see them communicating up in guys' face. And to me, they're the straw that really stirs that drink on defense between Poyer and Hyde. You can't ask much more out of those guys other than knock the ball down on last play. But that's just one play out of so many plays that they've made over the season.
Take us through that play and what's from a technique standpoint or a coaching standpoint. And obviously when you can slow it down and we can talk it out as opposed to the 5 seconds in which it happens in real time. But what's supposed to happen on that play that perhaps didn't?
Well, if I can go back in history, that last play of the game, really, it sucks. Because I remember we had to go through that when I was at University of Alabama. We played LSU the week that LSU and Kentucky played. If you guys remember that play where, who was the quarterback? Was it Randall? Threw the ball up, and LSU that's a game where Kentucky was splashing the Gatorade on their coach, and he made that last second grab to end the game. I went through hell. That whole secondary went through hell that week, because the whole thing that we had to come up with was forget trying to intercept the ball at the end of the game, pull the ball down, right? But getting to the last play of the game, that play was set up 2 plays before that. It was the same formation. They ran the same concept. And if you watch film, Christian Kirk on the second to last play was wide open, right? So I don't know if anybody was upstairs and saw that. Sean called a timeout. He went and adjusted and fixed that. And they had trips to the right. Nuke was by himself to the left. So they tried the Buffalo Bills to get a 4-on-3 concept. That's 4 defenders on 3 receivers. So you always have to create an extra man. And to the weak side where Hopkins was, a 2-on-1 situation with the safety bodying back over there. Now, everybody puts it on the secondary, but the game of football is an amazing game because it's a team game. And if everybody is doing their job, for the most part, that play is going to work. Now, up front, you had Mario Addison at the right end. I think Quentin Jefferson was the next defensive tackle in, Ed Oliver, and Jerry Hughes. Now, as we spoke about last week, we talked about keeping Murray in the pocket. Well, that's what you want to do on the last play or second to last play of the game. You don't want to give the quarterback time outside of the pocket where now you're in a plaster position where you have to say defensive back, plaster on your man. And now that's when you get chaos and plays get thrown up and the ball gets thrown up and guys make catches. So now if Mario Addison comes upfield and sticks a post into the ground and say, Kyler Murray, I don't care what you do, you're not getting outside of me. Right? The two guys up front, right, pass rush and push those the interior offensive lineman in the lap of a 5'10" quarterback's lap and
generously
force that quarterback now to put arc and touch on that ball to get it over the top. Now you're giving those guys in the back end a better chance at knocking the ball down where the ball is not on a flat line and now everyone's scattering and moving in total different directions. But now when you come down to the moment of truth when the quarterback does get out of the pocket, because, again, he's a phenomenal athlete, and you lost contain by the defensive end. So there's something that comes on to that too, and there's some blame on that too. Now you got to say, Tre'Davious, right? This is not the time to go up and get an interception, right? Your stats don't need to get padded on this one, right? Everyone recognized in the NFL that you are one of the premier corners. Regardless if you pick it off or you knock it down, you're going to be totally fine. Right. So for Tre'Davious, you got to go and get into the body of him, almost like you're boxing out and rebounding, right? If you're boxing out and rebounding, you get body on him, right? You're not going to run into him, give him pass interference, but he had enough time to locate the ball, which you've seen him turn his head around and see it. Furthermore, you should be playing deeper and coming up for that play, not running backwards and losing the best receiver, and everybody knows it. You can't let him go up and dunk on you like he did. But let me get back to the play, right? So you get into his body, box him out, and then you go up vertically with him. And then your whole entire job is to go up, put your hand on the ball, and pull that ball down to the ground. I'm talking about you want to do a volleyball spike, not go up and try to contest with a 6'2" receiver, you being 5'11". He's going to win for the most part. And then you saw guys with their eyes closed because most of the time, when you come into contact, guys close their eyes. So, but in that situation, you want to keep your eyes as wide as possible, open as possible. Go up and knock the ball. Poirier had his eyes closed. Micah had a chance to go up and get the ball, but that ball was already in Nuke's hands. And like I said last week, attitude, competitiveness is he's not gonna allow you to get that ball out of his hand. So it really came down to those simple points.
Do you feel of those three guys? Do you feel empathy, or you play the game, so you can say, I guess you can say sympathy. Like, who do you feel worse for of those three guys who had a chance to break it up?
I'll tell you the truth, Tim. I don't get feelings involved with all that stuff. They're professionals. You have a job to do. I'm pretty sure they were coached up to do that job. It now comes down to the unselfishness of a player wanting to win the game more than wanting to add an interception to end the game. Knocking the ball down in that situation, just as valuable as picking the ball off, in my opinion.
We didn't get to hear from Tre'Davious White after the game because he didn't talk to reporters, but I made mention in my column that you have to wonder if he's remembering last year's playoff game against DeAndre Hopkins, and he maybe wanted to make a statement on that last play of getting that interception as a clapback to the playoffs last year, and maybe that was on his mind. And as you say, again, I'm guessing, I'm totally speculating, but I think it's human nature. I think that makes sense to me. Is that he wanted to respond.
Yeah, and to me, regardless of what the name on the back of that jersey is, if it's White, Anderson, Dixon, Graham, right? You got to think team first. And last second of games on Hail Mary throws, every single defensive back coach and defensive back in America, if you're thinking consciously, you're saying, I got to pull that ball down I'm not going to tip it up, because if you tip it up, there's a chance that it can ricochet off somebody's hand and the receiver comes in and catch it. If you try to go up, it might go through your hands, and it creates a bunch of different scenarios that you'd rather not try to create. You want to just end the game. You want the game to be over. Forget the stats. The stats should have happened seconds before that. Get the game over with. And like I said, it's a teachable moment for all those guys on the back end, because it's going to come down to another Hail Mary throw at some point. If it's not the next game, it's going to be in the playoffs. And I'm pretty sure they're going to get drilled and coached up properly. And they have pride in that locker room, and they'll figure it out. But that's just a teachable moment for me.
What about the tactic you see a lot of coaches use of putting a wide receiver, a tall wide receiver, a tight end in the secondary to guard against Hail Marys? Is that something that would have helped on a play like that, and the Bills should maybe consider going forward?
Well, those guys have that in the playbook. Yeah. They're professional.
Does that work? Does that tend to work well?
Yeah, it works well if it was 6 seconds left on the clock, right? Because what did they have 12 seconds left, or was it
11?
11. I'm sorry. Okay, 11. So you're thinking you can get 2 plays out of this, right? So if they run a quick out and throw it to the boundary, you catch it, get out of bounds, you have 6, maybe 5 seconds left. That's when you go into your final play, where you put a taller guy back there to knock the ball down. But I'm thinking they believed it was going to be more 2 plays left in the game than just a singular play. So
That's
they
what Sean
have
McDermott
that. I just don't think they went to that format.
Sean McDermott, after the game, when I asked him something along those lines, the thought of having a taller guy back there, he essentially said that they didn't think it was the last play of the game, so they weren't really in Hail Mary mode. And it wasn't really a Hail Mary in the traditional sense of a Hail Mary as we've come to know it. That wasn't necessarily the design. Gerald, I want to get your input on what happened before that play to let them get to the 43-yard line. After, like you say, they had Kyler Murray bottled up to 170 passing yards before that drive. And then in a matter of 23 seconds, they get from the 25 up to the 43. What did you make of how they were playing defense before they even got to that Hail Murray, as it's being called?
Well, I got some stubborn behavior in me, and when I was coaching, you can say it's stubborn, but I never wanted my players to ever feel like I didn't have faith in what we practiced all week in terms of how I was calling the game or the way that I wanted them to play. And I say that to say this: they had probably one of the better strategies and schemes to stop Cliff Kingsbury from throwing the ball. And I believe if they would have just kept with what they were doing on defense instead of going to almost a preventative defense and a prevent defense, they would have probably been in better shape. Now, that's going back and looking at the film and doing all. When you're in that situation, you're thinking, hey, listen, let's just get out of the game and that. But I would have stayed more with my traditional calls and let the chips fall where they may.
Well, we've got your take on the cornerback aspect of things. Has Gerald Dixon, the quarterback, ever had one of those Hail Mary situations?
Quarterback, no. You know what? I never had that chance in high school to throw it up. But I've had situations at the end of the game where, like I said, that whole entire week before we played LSU my senior year was hell, because we practiced the last play of the game at least 15 to 20 minutes. And I remember just pull the ball down, spike the ball, and we had drills for it. And we ended up going down to Death Valley and beating the tar out of LSU, 31-0. And the year after that, they won the national championship. So don't know when the last time Nick Saban got blanked it like that.
Let me and then we'll wrap it up here, but let's take a look at this schedule, Gerald. Let me just get your thoughts. And for the record, in case you're listening and you don't have the schedule memorized out there, The remaining schedule for the Bills, they come back from the bye week. They're at home against the Chargers, at San Francisco on Monday Night Football, Pittsburgh at home, at Denver, at New England on Monday Night Football, and then finish on January 3rd at home, the regular season finale against the Miami Dolphins, which I think just a few weeks ago, people were thinking, well, maybe that'll be the game that they get to rest the starters. And now the Miami Dolphins just won't go away. That could be a very important game. First a bye could be on that game. The division could be on that game. Gerald, what are your thoughts on that home stretch?
Well, you have games that are going to be playoff type games, right? So if you want to go game by game, you can give me the game and we can talk right through it real quick. Go ahead and give me the first.
Come back against the Chargers, and I know your boy Anthony Lynn's been having a rough go, but the Chargers are an interesting team. They're very competitive. There's no walkover there for sure.
No. So here's a good thing about the Chargers in the last few games. Chargers in Seattle, like their defense is similar, right? So game plan wise, you can knock that out. But if those two defensive ends come back and they're healthy, Ingram and Bosa, now they pose a problem to your offensive line and the way that Josh is going to play. And coming from West, they come in the East, I would say the Bills should handle those guys fairly well. You got a young rookie quarterback. If you saw what Flores did to him last week, he confused the heck out of him by putting guys up in the A-gap, a lot of stuff that Leslie and Sean did against Russell Wilson and confused Russell. I think they can go into the same bag of tricks and confuse this young guy and pull out the victory.
And then
if you're I'm sorry to cut you off, but if
go
you're
ahead.
a team, like, those are the games you go in and say, hey, listen, we're going to mop these guys up coming off the bye. We're still pissed off of what happened. And your young cornerback, Tre'Davious, says, you know what? You guys got Keenan Allen. I'm going to put it on Keenan and let the rest of the world know that I'm back. Statement game.
Interesting game, I think, from Josh Allen's standpoint, going to San Francisco. It's technically his homecoming game. It's as close as you can get to Fireball, California. Oakland, he didn't have a chance to play at the Raiders. It is a Monday Night Football game. Josh Allen seems to get the jitters when the spotlight's on. Maybe it's a good thing that there won't be people in the stands, and then he doesn't have to worry about entertaining all his old high school classmates and friends and family, and he can just concentrate on playing a football game. But anyway, San Francisco also, who knows what they are. Their team has just been so devastated by injuries and what have you. I don't know. It's tough to handicap that game.
Well, yeah, I don't get into the betting thing, but I can get into the whole coaching philosophy deal, right? So you got Kyle Shanahan, one of the better play callers, but McVay, Shanahan, similar offense, right? So you have some understanding of what you're going to get. The guys on defense can go back and pull out what you did against the Rams and say, you know what, this is some of the same stuff that we're going to see. Don't know if the quarterback's going to be ready to play. I doubt if Jimmy's going to be there. So it's a Monday night game. And again, you're in the stretch. If you believe that you are a Super Bowl and playoff caliber team, you go on Monday night, and Josh, if you want to be put into that category of elite quarterbacks, and if the team wants to go into that category of one of the teams that should be taken seriously for a playoff drive, you go in on Monday night, and the whole world is watching, and you put a stamp and say, okay, world, you've heard about us on Sundays, but here's Monday. We're here to stay, and we're a real team. Period, and move on.
Well, there's another Hello World game right after that, too, because that might be the last remaining or the biggest remaining measuring stick game. I guess, well, maybe not, because who knows, with the Dolphins in the finale, too. Right. But Pittsburgh Steelers at Orchard Park the following week. And
Sunday Night Football.
Oh, right. That's a Sunday night game, too. So, yeah, 3 of their last 6 games are scheduled for prime time.
I'm guessing that one will stay.
So you got competitors, right? So you got Chargers, San Francisco, right? Two teams that you should beat, that they're riddled with injuries, and they have young quarterbacks that you shouldn't have much issues with. But both teams can pretty much run the ball well, and you struggled with that. But regardless of that, you got Pittsburgh. So you line up and say, okay, good. Josh, this is Ben Roethlisberger. You want to put your stamp on the NFL and want to get into the big boy conversation, you go out there and you outplay him. Right? Period. It's Josh versus Ben that night. Who plays the best wins that game.
At Denver. So that's probably the breather that's left on this schedule is at Denver. But it's tough to breathe in Denver.
Right. So
no pun intended.
So those games are the ones that, as a coach, you really want to harp on a little bit more and over prepare your guys for that game and make those guys feel like you just won. Say you just won all 4 of those games in a row, and you come to that game and said, "Okay, cool." Or is it 3 in a row? And you just battled. You just went to the West Coast. You just had Anthony Lynn in the Chargers that are 2-0 versus Sean, right? You beat them, so it's okay, good. We just whooped them. They beat us 2 times in a row. And then you go against Ben, you beat Ben, and you go into Denver. Denver could be the game that a lot of guys just try to take a sigh of relief and say, oh, we don't have to play against a top-notch team. But that's when professionals jump in and you lose a game like that. So those are the games that you want to stay more sharp and more ready in and pull out a game that might be sluggish and still find a way to win in Denver. Because, again, it's on the road. It's an AFC game, and you want to win that to put yourself in a pretty good position for the strong playoff run that you seem to be on.
And not a primetime game. So you'll be coming off back-to-back primetime games with a primetime game in Foxborough coming up the next week. So that spotlight, yeah, that is when you would naturally, like you say, like, all right, we got a chance. We got a little room to breathe right here. We have a chance to, not take it easy, but it creeps into your subconscious.
Right.
You're a human being.
So when you look at when that turkey gets cut, right, it's now cooking time, right? The season has now started. What the games that just happened before, you just want to put yourself in a good situation where you're over 500 and you're controlling your own destiny. And that's a position that the Bills have been in the last 2 years. So now you see where you truly are as a franchise and as a position player, where you are as a professional. How are you going to handle success with winning 7 games or 8 or 9 or 10 and going into Foxborough knowing that you are the better team? So whenever you're the lead dog, and a lot of people always want to say front runners look down upon, right? But in order to be a front runner, you got to be in the lead. You got to be a winner to be a front runner, right? And most winners are front runners. So when you are in the lead and you're front runner and people are coming up now to hunt you, what's your take on it? How are you going to prepare and how are you going to play in that game, right? And you go up to Foxborough, you put it on them again and say, world, we are here. And we're here to stay. And it wasn't a fluke, a Zimmer punch out at the end that won us the game. We can actually line up and beat you bad in your house and go home and celebrate.
I guess there's two. We don't know enough to really talk about the Dolphins game, but that obviously could be a crucial matchup that brings back a lot of the old memories of a rivalry that's really kind of withered because the Bills and the Dolphins haven't been that great. But you'd have to go back to the 90s when Marino and Jim Kelly were going at it on a year-to-year basis. It'll get the fans all lathered up.
Well, Can I just say, I hope that game matters, because if the Bills play well enough in the 5 games before that, they can go in and clinch the division, not need to beat Miami, and probably won't put much out there to try to beat Miami that week. So I hope, even though this goes against maybe what the Bills fans want, I hope that the division is on the line when those 2 teams play again, and it will be a bit of a revival of that rivalry that's been dormant for a long time.
Well, if you look at the Miami schedule, they got a pretty good schedule to win some games and make that game a serious game and matter at the end of the season. And have you seen Miami in the last few weeks? They're playing darn good. They're playing real good defense. They're playing like hell on special teams. They're kicking butt on special teams. They're getting turnovers, right? They're using their turnovers and scoring points, right? And they can pass rush, they can stop the run, and they can run the ball. And they got the lefty back there pulling the trigger.
Best player in Alabama history.
No doubt about it. I said it.
They've got the Dolphins have the Broncos,
Winnable game.
the Jets,
Winnable game.
the Bengals,
Winnable game.
the Chiefs, the Patriots, the Raiders, and then the Bills in Week 17. So 3 games they should win, probably 2 that you would say they have a chance against the Patriots and the Raiders.
Right.
They probably don't beat the Chiefs, but a possibility for them to win 5 of those games heading into that Week 17 game against the Bills. But I don't know, that's where we find out. Is this a young team that is, going to have a hot middle part of the season? Are they capable of winning 5 of these final games heading into, that Week 17 game? I don't know. We'll find out how far along they are. Because if they do win 5 of those games, they're already on a 5-game winning streak right now. So that would be a hell of a finish to the season if they win 5 of the next 6 heading into that. That would be 10 out of 11 going into that Bills game.
And they're going to have some struggles, right? Every team has that 1 or 2 game valley that they go into. But when you play defense like they're playing right now, that can get after the quarterback and stop the ball from being ran down their throats, and play special teams that well with Danny Crossman, what he got going on down there, blocking punts, returning punts for touchdown.
Yeah, where did this Danny Crossman come from? We didn't see any of this Danny Crossman when he was coaching the Bills special teams.
What do you mean? You didn't see any kicks get returned to the house? Like a punt return?
I didn't see a lot of dynamic special teams play out of the Bills when Danny Crossman was the coordinator.
I'm going to say it again. There are good coaches. There aren't great coaches. There are great players that make coaches look good. And if you don't have great players, you're just an average coach. There was a guy in Cleveland that left Cleveland and went to New England, and he's the greatest coach of all time. But when he was in Cleveland, his name wasn't even mentioned, right? Because you got players.
Well, I've always kind of wondered about this. I could see a lot of different phases of special teams where the coaching matters, but actually returning the kicks and punts, that seems to be, one man and his ability more than anything on the football field, right?
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, it's 1 or 2 blocks that you pick up. You make the first guy miss. That the first guy's on the returner, which the Bills got a guy back there, played at the Citadel. He got coached by a pretty good guy, Gerald Dixon. But he finds a way to make guys miss, and I mean he's a key contributor on that whole entire team. So, in my time with the Bills, we never really had a punt returner that you were scared of, or that could
a punt catcher.
Yeah, a punt returner. Yeah, that can feel the ball.
That's
Leotis was.
That's a joke from before your time. Gerald, there was Chris Watson.
When you were a little baby,
a punt returner in Buffalo, in which I happened to be the reporter, even though I didn't cover the Bills on a regular basis. I happened to ask Wade Phillips the question. Chris Watson was awful, and Wade Phillips said, "Well, he's not really a punt returner; he's a punt catcher." And it was actually kind of one of the things that helped push Wade out there. It became a subject of ridicule, is that Wade Phillips doesn't even return punts anymore. He just catches them. He doesn't even, because anyways, take a look at Chris Watson's stats that year. Everything was a fair catch. I think he averaged 2 yards.
Even though you think that Chris Watson was before my time, I actually played with Chris.
No kidding.
I played with Chris in Detroit. Cornerback.
Yeah.
Eastern.
A punt catching cornerback.
Yeah, was Chris from Eastern Michigan? Or Eastern, I forget where Chris is from, but yeah, Chris played corner He left Detroit and came over to Buffalo. But C. Watt was all right guy, man. We knew that he wasn't a punt returner. That was on
Eastern Illinois.
Eastern Illinois. Okay, I know it was something Eastern, but yeah, Chris. I played with Chris.
Tony Romo's alma mater.
Yeah, Sean Payton, right? Jimmy.
Well, Gerald, thanks for giving us your thoughts here. Enjoy your Sunday off. I don't know what you're going to watch with no Bills game, with just whatever happens to be on.
You keep on saying Sunday off like I'm working, man. My Sundays are always off.
You're always working. If you're a scout, you're always working. You can't just sit and enjoy a football game, right? You're always scouting it. That's my guess.
I enjoy the games when I'm watching, and I don't really care who wins. So I'm enjoying them now.
But aren't you still scouting though? I mean, you're making mental notes. You're watching the game as you're not just absorbing the game like a fan would.
No, I tried doing that, but it never works. And most of the time, I got to get away from my wife because she's like, "All right, you just said touchdown, and the guy didn't even finish running yet." I'm like, "Yeah, there's 22 on the field. There's 20 behind him, and that other guy's not catching touchdown. Get out the way." So yeah, I look at it that way. You're right. I'm always working when I'm not supposed to.
Well, thanks for giving us your time, as always. And we'll get you next week, since this is now a permanent thing. You're trapped and you're stuck with it now. You're on the hook.
Jonah, we got to get on your UB guys, man. They're rolling.
Yeah, we need our own podcast without Tim and Matt. We can just talk about those things all night.
Jonah, you got to get with my agents. I cost a bag of potato chips and some peanuts and maybe some good
what?
Some good water.
What's this? Peanuts and potato chips. What's this?
I'm down. That's all I needed to hear.
Did I miss the reference, or
what else is involved? But
that's what my agent said. I got to get out of this deal with Jonah.
Oh, I see. I see.
Oh, I have to provide the press box snacks. That's new. I've never had to do that before. Potluck press box.
Hey man, high demand, man. I'm being a diva now.
All right.
I'll get you some wings. You said you've never been to Elmo's. We'll get you some Elmo's wings. One of these days, probably in the new millennium, but
yeah,
someday before the end of time.
2024, we'll get to it.
We'll get it to go, and we'll sit in a park on a park bench, and we'll find a picnic table out at the beach or something at LaSalle Park, and we'll have Elmo's and watch the waves.
Wow. Guys, tell me how the waves look and tell me how the wings taste. I don't know if I'm gonna make that trip.
All right. Thanks, Gerald.
All right.